Okay, so I just finished watching a debate between Vaush and a newer content creator called Pogan. They were debating whether or not NATO represents net harm, from a socialist perspective. The socialist perspective aspect is key here, because Pogan's underlying claim is that NATO is essentially bad for socialism, as it represents a hindrance to its growth. Here are some excerpts from the debate.
Dichotomous moral thing. It's more that the institution they're representative of, that they serve, is an institution that, in order to achieve our goal, our mutual goal, which is
So is the
socialism, would have
DMV.
to be abolished.
So is the DMV. Like, so is everything.
I don't think the DMV is even remotely on the same level as an obstacle to socialism as the
The
police.
DMV is as much an obstacle to socialism as NATO is, I'll tell you that much. With
That's no
regards,
offense. That's an insane thing to say.
it
That's
absolutely is not, because so far you haven't managed to demonstrate any argument that stuff you say NATO would do wouldn't just be done by the constituent powers of NATO. You don't even think that's a relevant consideration, which is to me completely insane. What you're essentially saying is, yeah, I'm okay with hating this flag, never mind the fact that even if you got rid of the flag, you could just have the same country doing bad stuff under a different flag. Like, but the flag is bad. It'd be like getting angry at the U.S. flag,
I'm
like not because
saying
it
I'm
exists as
saying
a
the
symbol, but the
institution.
actual flag.
Sure, I'm saying the institution of NATO is again, good and bad are deliberately like confining terms, because I don't think this is a purely moral consideration. What I'm saying is, look, there are maybe instances. I feel like I'm repeating myself. There may be instances where you can justify some sort of NATO interventionist act, but
No,
that
no,
does
no.
not change the
It's not
fact that,
about
just if,
justifying
if I may,
NATO intervention.
if I
What
may, if I
harm
may, I
is
don't. I just want to finish my point.
okay?
The point is, that does not change the fact that NATO is a direct, tangible, significant obstacle to the goal that you and I have. The reason
How?
it's because you agreed that if it were the case that the
No, no, no,
proletariat.
no. You can't wait. When you say this, it makes me think you're not listening to me.
Sure.
NATO would do that, but so would all the countries that are a part of NATO if NATO didn't exist. In
Yeah,
order
you
for
should oppose
harm
both,
well, I oppose the Western hegemony. In order for
which NATO
NATO
serves,
to be
right?
harmful, no, in order for NATO to be harmful, NATO has to contribute unique negative outcomes, as in that without NATO, these negative outcomes wouldn't take place. What you're doing right now, funnily enough, is actually like the neoliberal, we need more trans drone pilots. You're not taking an issue with the underlying system. You're taking an issue with its representational form, with its iconic form.
Wait, but
You're not looking
I
at the
am
police.
taking an issue with the underlying
You're
system.
no, getting mad at NATO is like getting mad at police by saying that the one police chief is really bad.
Why do you think I'm mad?
Okay, hold on. Don't act in bad faith. You know perfectly well that when I say getting mad, what I'm referring to is the oblique taking political opposition towards. I'm not accusing you of personally being upset by the conversation.
Okay, fair enough.
But
That's fine. Yeah, maybe I misunderstood. I just want to be clear though that, like, it's saying that I am not performing some sort of like underlying assessment of the system or the institutions is not accurate. In fact, I've said multiple times that what I am opposing, even in spite of particular instances that can be cited as perhaps consequentially good, is the fact that the institution and the agenda that it serves is something that should not be supported, should be condemned, right? That's the point.
but
That is a
its
systemic
existence
analysis.
doesn't change the outcome. Well, it does actually. It changes the outcomes in a beneficial way because of the protection of the Eastern Bloc states.
Do you think bourgeois interests are stronger or weaker with the existence of NATO?
I don't think they change.
I don't see how one can say they don't change when, per your own admission, NATO is an institution that would be used to squash a socialist revolution.
Okay, you need to. This is a flag. The flag might be flown when such a nation is squashed, but that doesn't change the tanks rolling underneath it. You're arguing against the flag. You can change the flag, get rid of NATO. The tank is still there. NATO, in order for it to be harmful, it would need to contribute unique harm. If there's harm that would happen with or without NATO, then NATO wasn't what caused the harm. Focusing on it is irrelevant. Now, again, on the empirics of the situation, I have explained multiple times why I think NATO's existence does unique good, because it protects former Soviet states. But you have
Mm-hmm.
not only have you not addressed this, like every time this comes up, you seem to not believe there's a meaningful difference between NATO doing the harm or not doing the harm.
Do you think that? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that NATO, coerces European states to either, and America, presumably you accept that America is imperialist. So what I'm struggling to comprehend is why a socialist would endorse in any way an institution that is fundamentally, at least on some level, committed to the preservation and maintenance of imperialism, right? Specifically bourgeois capitalist imperialism. That's not to say... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, that institution is absolutely a manifest of the will of its constituent countries and their geopolitical aims. But I don't think its existence adds any harm to the world. Obviously, all these countries, France, Germany, America, blah, 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 are going to pursue their own geopolitical interests either way. The absence of NATO wouldn't change that. It wouldn't prevent them from doing those things. Certainly in the case of America, who really doesn't need the permission of anyone to do what it does. So with all that being said, it seems to me like NATO's existence just doesn't contribute any negative to the world. I can say it contributes a positive because of its effect on deterring Russian aggression, but there's an equivocacy here that I take issue with. You said earlier that they expanded aggressively. Well, aggression is a broad descriptor. When Russia expands aggressively, it does so with tanks. When NATO does, it offers deals that countries are often eager to accept. Who wouldn't want to be a part of the world's strongest military alliance, right? It is true that America effectively leads NATO, but I think a lot of European countries like that. It affords them a sort of infinite and unconditional protection. Being a part of NATO means that anyone who attacks you has to deal with America, and no one can deal with America. So altogether, it seems like it's in the interest of these countries as well to be a part of NATO. It's something they want, not something forced on them. And as long as, we're to accept these are neoliberal countries, these are imperialist countries, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every act of presumed self-defense on their part is a moral negative.
Now, as a CIA-funded, totally George Soros-aligned social democrat, I don't quite share their framework as I am not a socialist. But let's go with it anyhow, and let's use an analogy that's a tad less abstract. It's like these two are arguing over whether their neighborhood watch represents a net positive or a net negative. Pogan is arguing that this neighborhood watch does more harm than good, because the members are alt-right adjacent white nationalists, and they are complete dickheads to minorities and engage in whatever activities you can expect white nationalists to engage in. In fact, the existence of the neighborhood watch prevents minorities, or let's say, more minorities from moving into the neighborhood. Vaush points out that the existence of these white nationalists and their attitudes are what prevent this, not the fact that they've formed a neighborhood watch. Pogan says he would prefer a neighborhood watch that's far more diverse and friendly to minorities. Perhaps it could even be run by minorities. Vaush points out that he would like this as well, but the neighborhood demographics prevent this from happening. This is the neighborhood they have, and the neighborhood watch is doing its job in preventing or at least reducing crime and keeping the neighborhood relatively safe. The problem Pogan is attributing to the neighborhood watch is a problem with the member neighbors, to begin with, and that would be a problem without the neighborhood watch. So the neighborhood watch isn't presenting a problem that would exist without it, but it is preventing or at least mitigating problems that would exist or exist in greater magnitude in its absence. Oh, and if the white nationalist analogy doesn't work for you, feel free to substitute any group of people or organization that works for you. That's my 2 cents on this debate. I've linked to their discussion in the description below.